Last Pint Productions has been taken over by the Villains League. Today's New Way podcast with Ben and Bat contains evil adult content, including world domination, ridiculous accents, and Google. Listener discretion is advised.
What's your name?
John?
What's your real name, John?
You look like a Marcy Bay.
Marcy was my grandmother's name.
You answer me like I'm Jesus Christ himself, and if you fucking lie to me, may your mother die. I can't try the eyes.
I'm setting the example, and what I've done is going to be puzzled over and studied and followed.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Welcome once again to the New Way podcast with Ben and Matt. I am Ben.
I am Matt.
And thanks again for tuning in this week. Of course, you can find us on all of the click-throughs on our page, lastpintprod.com.
The click-throughs.
The click-throughs.
It's a good hipster band name right there.
The click-throughs. Actually,
the
it isn't bad. You know what? We were watching, my wife and I, get this. So this week, my family, my stepmother and my sister were in town for 5 days, like on the last second. My stepmother... My sister had a doctor's appointment in Weston, Florida. My stepmother had a ditz moment, which is a lot of the time, and thought that Weston, Florida was for some reason in Tampa. So she was in Tampa visiting family. They looked at the address the day before the appointment, and then were like, wow, this is on the other side of the state. So they called us and ended up staying with us for 4 days.
Yeah, I was wondering how that was like a surprise. But
it
was
was
like
a surprise.
I have a surprise family visit. And like, how do those happen? Like, where someone just shows up out of nowhere?
But anyways, and I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but my stepmother and my sister, who is 17 years old, had never seen the Goonies before.
Wow.
They had never seen the Goonies. So we watched the Goonies on Thursday night, and I think that they both really enjoyed it. I think my stepmother actually almost maybe enjoyed it more than my sister did. But we thought I think my wife and I figured out a great band name would be Troy's Bucket.
Troy's Bucket. You just go right up on Troy's Bucket. I like that.
Yeah, Troy's yeah. And
also a good porn title.
It could be. Anyways, yeah, of course, so we've got the click-throughs on our site, of course, Twitter, @LastPintProd, Facebook.com/LastPint. Visit us everywhere. Comment on something if you want to. Eventually, I'm hoping to, have more listeners, but it'll happen.
Someday. One day we'll have listeners.
One day. I've been waiting until we hit that, that...
Four listeners?
No, I've been waiting until we hit that pinnacle. I think right now we've got, 20 or 30 scripts or whatever, but I've been waiting for that magical 20 that we hit.
Yes.
And then I can actually maybe, post it in my, FSU newsletter and be like, come and listen to The Last Pint. Because then we might
we have 20 podcasts.
Because then we might have 4 more listeners from that or something.
Yeah, so. we have had a bit of a law of diminishing returns on the listens. But people are still listening. We're sitting around that 30 mark now for the last, 3 or 4 of them. But I enjoy them.
Sure.
I love to hear myself talk. It's wonderful.
We are those guys.
Yes.
We're like, oh man, we had this part that was so funny. Let's go back and listen to that over and over and over again.
I'll be honest. Sometimes I just listen to the intros that I record because I'm so proud of the work I've done.
I think I need to record the tag this week.
I think we need to. I think we need to do a combined tag one of these times.
Sure.
We sort of did when we did the screw ups. Also. We're very curious. No one seems to write us about stuff anyway, but maybe we'll put this out on the blog as far as things you guys might like to hear. Because I was talking to Greg about this at work, who you can hear on our Pubcast podcast, about doing doing some interesting stuff, like a commentary track on a movie, and kind of some of the what is it, like laugh tracks or real tracks or
riff tracks?
Riff tracks. Sorry.
All right.
Some of my awesome attempted to escape immediately through my mouth. Holy shit.
What you guys cannot see in Matt's apartment right now is that Matt very momentarily turned into Cthulhu. It was like, Zalgo, he comes.
I just gave myself a Pacific Rim job.
That was pretty impressive, bud. Anyways, well...
Sipho Fizzy Water. You've done it again.
Yeah, so anyways, yes, please give us your ideas. If there's anything, or if there's a topic that you specifically want to hear about, write in.
We will do anything, like, anything that you want to see. Like, if you just have, like, a weird fetish, like, just something weird that you want to hear two guys do on a microphone, we'll do it.
We're not scared.
Yeah, we have no morals. We have no pride.
We have no inhibitions.
Yeah, we'll do whatever you want.
We especially won't have any inhibitions later this afternoon. Matt and I are attending the Palm Beach County Summer Brew Fest.
Beer Fest.
Beer Fest. So we are beer festing this entire afternoon. And the funny thing is, I'm giving Matt a ride up to my house, and then my wife is going to drive us. Obviously, we need a designated driver for this event. We have 2 birthday parties to attend after. I think I'm just going to drag you along to them.
Oh, God.
We'll drink, and then we'll drink some more, and then we'll drink some more, and then you're going to just be like...
Oh, this is going to be a bad day.
The whole idea is I really want to get Matt back to the level he was at the first night of my bachelor party, where he ate cat food. He ate cat food, and then apparently tried to make Stop Trump, which we have no idea what that means.
At some point, I'm going to get Paul to send me the audio for that. We will play it for you. It really is probably the most like sustained drunk I've gotten almost ever. I was pretty bad at your wedding, but the Make Stop Trump night was just like it was just a perfect storm.
Well, I think the best part would be is if we especially if we do another like drunk cast or another like pub cast or something like that, just make the entire opening like while Naked and Famous is playing. Just make it that whole conversation. What? You stop, you Donald Trump, motherfucker.
I resort to just making sounds and then yelling at someone with the words, "You make Stop Trump."
You better make Stop Trump.
Which apparently in my head, I thought I was saying something like coherent that made sense because I said it multiple times, like saying you should get off the couch. Like it's something like that in my head. I'm just like, you make Stop Trump. You better make, and that's where I know I was trying to say something when I was like, you better make Stop Trump. It was a threat. I was gonna mess someone up, and I don't know what I was gonna do to them.
It could be a combination of that and the recording we made in L.A. last year of
the
Don't you hunger inside my loins. No, but
quench the hunger inside my loins.
Can't you quench the hunger inside
hunger loins?
The hunger loins. You won't know what that means, but you will.
You will.
Later.
You will know all of our dirty little secrets.
Anyways, so hopefully this will be a good day, good evening, good afternoon.
A good day to come hard.
A good day to come hard. But today, what we wanted to briefly broach as far as topics concerned is we wanted to talk about villains. I'm not sure how that topic came up.
You brought it up.
I brought it up. I'm not sure how it came to my head. I just specifically wanted to talk about villains. Here's the funny thing. I have been rolling this topic around in my head ever since we decided that that's what we're going to be talking about. I have not made a single note, but I have different beats that I want to cover. I have different things that I want to talk about.
Well, I'm super curious because Ben's like, all right, favorite villains from like movies or theater. And they specifically pointed out theater. So obviously you've got someone in your head.
I said TV.
Oh, I thought you said like...
No, I said movie and TV.
Oh, so I have TV. For some reason, I thought you had this one really good theater villain. I was like, is it like Salieri? Like, who are you going for as far as... I was like, theater villains are...
Lear? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I had no idea. I've been thinking about that for like 3 days and what the hell you were going to say. Now I get nothing.
No.
Bullshit.
I wasn't really going to harp on anything as far as theater was concerned. At least I had no intention or no design to. But, I really was going to think about the villains that always stick out in our head, the ones that are obviously the ones that everybody discusses. And in a second, I actually kind of want to go on a little quick aside, but also there are so many villains that have gone under the radar over the course of the years, and a few of those I think we want to mention because we don't want to talk. I mean, obviously there are lots of things that we could talk about. My quick aside before we get into anything before we discuss villains or before we talk about compartmentalizing villains, because there are going to be a few different categories I think we can actually sub-categorize these villains as. There are two I want to get immediately out of the way. A, because they're very recent, and two, because everybody talks about them. Those two villains are Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight and Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards. Now, being on the Rotten Tomato forums, that's like everybody's favorite villains in the last 5 years, or 6 years, or whatever it is, ever since The Dark Knight came out. Those are great movies. Those are obviously highly characterized villains, and they're both brilliantly perceived. They're both brilliantly done by their actors, respectively. But they've been discussed ad nauseum to the point where, I mean, I'm sure were you going to bring either of them up?
It's like I made a huge list like I normally do, and yeah, they're on the list. But I wouldn't discuss the Joker, but I was kind of interested in discussing Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. But yeah, I agree. Like it's super well worn territory, and there are a lot more interesting choices. Those are the ones that I think make for good radio, is to talk about the ones where someone's like, wow, I never would have thought of that person as a villain, or that's a villain, it's a really like meaty, because the problem with both the Joker and Hans Landa is, and it hits a lot of the ones on my list, is that you were talking about, there are different types of villains. There's the grandstanding villain, which is kind of the Joker. The Joker is an amazing performance, but there's not a lot to the character. Like, there's no motivation, really, other than the chaos kind of thing. Like, you can make some arguments. But both of them are, like, pretty just, like, Snidely Whiplash.
He's like the Ian Malcolm of...
Yeah, exactly.
The chaos theory villain.
And a lot of the villains fall into that. And then there are the ones that are a little bit more interesting. And for a while, I really didn't like... Like, I didn't like... in Spider-Man 2 with Dr. Octopus, that they added the, like... There was a period where they tried to shoehorn in motivation and make sympathetic villains in movies. It, like, seemed like that was the big thing. Like, we can't just have, like, an evil villain. We've got to do these things. And most of them didn't do it well. And it started to really grate against me. Like, I don't feel Doc Ock's plight.
Well, because it's not realistic. There's nothing about his motivations that seem even remotely human. And there's nothing that I don't watch that and I'm like, oh well, that kind of makes sense that he would go that far down that road.
Yeah,
and I mean the same thing with with Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars movies. It was just like there are these leaps where it's like, oh, I understand he's supposed to get to this point, but him acting one way in one scene and then 10 minutes later killing all these kids.
No,
I was just like,
work.
no, it just doesn't. It doesn't progress that way. Like but I think it's interesting what you said. They're the grandstanding villains, like the ones that are innately
fun to watch.
They're fun to watch.
Campy.
They're campy and they're evil. They might have ulterior motives. They might even have humanistic characteristics, but they're big characters. And we'll talk about some of those. Then what were the other characters? I was going to talk about the ones that kind of grow, the ones that kind of...
Yeah, there are... And what was upsetting to me is that like, kind of when we do these really quick, and it was kind of... We discussed this on Wednesday, and I just didn't spend enough time on it, because I know there are other movies I'm going to be leaving off of here that I had forgotten. They're like, oh, that was a really complex character that was on the bad side. But there are some ones, for sure, that I have on my list that are definitely villains, but they're understandable. They're ones that you can say, I get why this person's a villain. And the best ones are the ones where you're like, I don't necessarily think the villain is wrong in this situation. Right. And those are the ones I'm really interested in. I didn't come up with enough of them really on my list as I wanted, but yeah, those are ones that like interest me for sure.
Okay, excellent. And then I think you have sort of the sneaky villains, like the ones that are like, some people might even consider them more of an tertiary character as opposed to a villain, like somebody that obviously doesn't have the best intent, or maybe somebody who just fucks everything up really bad to the point where they seem like a villain. That's some people, have people along those lines that they consider, a villainous character, or the foil. Yeah, I suppose would be the best way to explain it. and in a lot of cases, those actually might be considered some people's favorite, villains. The ones that are a little bit more human, the ones that are a little bit more. I've got a great one on that front, I think. But
I have like 5 pretty underground ones. I would say I have some bigger ones. Do you want to get like the bigger ones out of the way, since we're kind of talking about that anyway right now about or did you really want to like go through all of it?
I didn't want to go through all of it necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of wanted to start on. I like kind of the big. We can start with the big ones.
Okay.
And I think we should start with the ones that we feel are a little bit more, I guess,
interesting big ones.
Yeah, the interesting big ones that I think that are, if you're going to talk about the grandstanding characters, then that's
this one's not really a grandstander, but it's still. I mean, I've said it before. It's my favorite comic book movie, which is X-Men 2, and I think the Ian McKellen Magneto. I mean, they're drawing from very easy source material. It's Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I mean, that's Xavier and Magneto, and that's like saying, well, who was a villain? Was Malcolm X a villain? Necessarily, because Malcolm X is the Magneto character, but you've got a character that essentially has said, like, I've been, he's part of not only like part of the concentration camps as a Jewish person, but then also the same thing as a mutant, as an adult. And basically is saying, like, well, let's just make everyone mutants. Like, let's just level the playing field and make us all the same. And it makes sense. Like, I don't feel that Magneto's wrong in a lot of the things he does.
And that's one of the ones that I consider, because I don't consider that a character so one note. I don't consider that like the Bond villain.
I just meant like he's a big,
you meant like
a well-known
exactly.
villain.
And even a lot of times there are lots of times where you understand or can not necessarily sympathize, but you understand where the villain is coming from specifically. Like one example would be in, for example, so here's the thing. If they're motivated by something, like say they're motivated by money, like your Hans Gruber from Die Hard. Hans Gruber is obviously, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to do what I have to do, and it's, he's ruthless to a point, but in a lot of ways, I think that movie, his henchmen are almost even more like, he's just kind of this evil sort of mastermind, and everything, but you understand. I mean, he's basically just like, okay, we're going to steal all this money, and we're going to, I don't
really find any sympathy for him.
No. I wouldn't understand. I wasn't talking about a sympathetic standpoint. I was talking about somebody who it's like, you see that movie and you understand what his motivation is. It's not something esoteric. It's not something evil. He's just greedy.
Yeah. Versus him in Robin Hood, where he's more evil.
Yeah,
it's evil power and that kind of thing.
Yeah. In Robin Hood, he's definitely in same sort of hammy performance.
Yeah.
But he's definitely a lot more completely. I mean, like I said, you wouldn't call it sympathetic, but it's like I think that one of the things that McTiernan did really well in Die Hard. One of the reasons why the film feels a little more gritty and a little more realistic to me is because especially the inner play between all of the villains, there's dissent between them. And some of these guys are just trained killers. And he's like, we will not kill this person or whatever. I mean, he's ruthless to a point. But
is that your FDR impersonation? We will not kill. I'm Hans Gruber.
I can't do Rickman.
That was amazing.
I can do a couple of impressions. Rickman is not one of them.
Tell Mr. McClane to come down to the front desk.
Yeah. But anyways, I find that sort of an interesting, but obviously he's one of the biggest villains of all time. He's a great villain. He's completely a bad guy, and you never have any doubts about whether he's a bad guy or not. But it's not like, oh, this guy is pure evil.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and I mean, there's a huge list of these. And
sure.
I didn't want to I don't really want to go into Voldemort. That's because that's another one that's essentially Hitler. I mean, that's really the entire storyline of Hitler. He is one thing. He grows to hate that thing. He attacks that thing and tries to split the two sides and make one a scapegoat. That's
right.
It's pretty simple. as far as I'm trying to like look for ones that are on that pure evil side. I mean, you've got Bond villains. I like Silva.
I've got a really interesting one that actually turns to a pure villain.
Okay.
After what is considered now, I don't know. People seem to be very split on the movie. But the 1981 John Borman film Excalibur, Helen Mirren plays Morgana. Now, Morgana is Arthur's brother, Arthur is Morgana's brother. So, but Morgana was born out of a very weird sort of incestuous type of thing, and so Arthur was is the king basically. Morgana is a witch sister. Now, for the first half of Morgana's life, Morgana's considered an ally, even as she's discovering her gifts. Merlin takes Morgana under his wing to basically teach her the good side. Basically, she's Anakin Skywalker, better translated than Anakin Skywalker was in the prequel films for Star Wars. Because what happens is she is almost to the same extent that Tom Riddle is Voldemort, but Tom was especially the way they portrayed it in the movies, Tom's always innately evil.
That's the problem, there's never a struggle with him. There's a better struggle with Snape, who's not really a villain.
Right, exactly.
Anti-hero.
Exactly, he's the anti-hero. But the thing is, Morgana had a struggle with whether she was going to be good or whether she was going to be bad, and she eventually ends up turning and entrapping her master, Merlin, and essentially, for all intents and purposes, killing him. And then turns and essentially destroys Arthur, doesn't kill him, but leaves him incapacitated. After she utilizes his king seed to do this further incestuous son, who ends up being, the one they end up killing each other at the end of the movie. Sorry, spoiler alert. But anyways, Morgana was interesting because she, at the end of that movie, she is the epitome of, pure evil. She's basically the Wicked Witch. Yeah. But when she is first born, and as Arthur and him are getting older, they are half siblings, and she's supposed to be a power of good in his life. She's supposed to be the protege of Merlin. Yeah. And you can see her being sympathetic to Arthur, and Arthur being sympathetic to her plight, and vice versa. So I thought that she was a really interesting one, because by the end of that movie, the two of them are just, bad people. And then when she dies, you're like, yes, Merlin got her.
And that's good. And the turn is always a really important thing. You mentioned a really good point earlier of, talking about, so many movies get the turn wrong. Like, the fucking new Oz movie. The reasoning behind if you're going to do a story, it's going to tell us how the Wicked Witch became the Wicked Witch, and you're going to try to make her an interesting turn. That is the focus. Like, all the other shit that goes into that script is meaningless. The one thing you have to do right is figure out who she was before and why she turns. And why she turns in it is fucking ridiculous. Like, it's insulting. It's just stupid. When Wicked does it, does a lot better version of that than the Oz movie does. But one that's kind of interesting that is a turn, but it's a turn for a reason, and it's another one that has been talked about a lot, I admit, but Jack Torrance in The Shining. The reason why I like Torrance is that he is a villain. The villain isn't Torrance. The villain is alcohol. It's alcoholism. Right. I mean, that's what The Shining is about. If anyone thinks The Shining is just like a fucking creepy Stephen King thing, it's not. It's about an alcoholic who literally, it's Jekyll and Hyde. This is what this person becomes when they succumb to their addiction, and they become this horrible, evil villain. But that's one of the reasons why I like it, is I think it's one of the most interesting looks at that kind of an issue in a movie that's done with a really creepy background.
Right, yeah, I think that's actually a really good one. I have a couple of interesting turn ones. Okay. One's falls into a different category. This was one that is a turn. It's an interesting villain to start out with, but it's a turn that isn't necessarily. It's not. It's necessitated by events that happen in the film, but you don't need a reason for them to turn, and that's Hal in 2001: A Space Odyssey. I had Hal on my list. Which is, you're supposed to have this artificial intelligence that is helping the crew, and essentially the computer comes up with its own reasons why this mission should essentially fail.
Yeah.
Or why it should do what it thinks it should do. And it becomes probably one of the most menacing, or like quietly menacing presences in any movie that I've seen. But it's a very clear, definitive villain, but you can see it's this logic and reasoning that it's arrived at this non-human sort of perspective to the point where it's a robot. It'll do anything it needs to accomplish the goals necessary. Yeah. And so I think that's an interesting turn.
For sure. I have one that I don't know if it's a turn. It's another one it's sort of the movie is a metaphor, and when I first watched it, I was horrified by it, and then when I kind of read a little bit more and sort of realized what they were going for, I actually thought it was brilliant. But have you ever seen Audition?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Audition, if you haven't seen it, is a very messed up, is it Korean, or is it...
I think it's, I think it is.
It's a foreign film that literally takes...
It's not Japanese, I don't think.
No,
I think it's Korean.
I think it's Korean. Like, it takes a left turn like you've never seen coming in your entire life. And I know that's probably a bad way to sell the movie because I didn't really know about it, but essentially the villain in it is a woman, like a jilted lover almost. And you watch this movie and it'll scare the shit out of you, but the whole movie
it's very close to encroaching on torture porn.
Yes.
Which I don't like. I'm not.
But it has
that.
It works. Like
it works better than like Hostel 2.
But when I was because there's a story, there's a meaning behind it, which is what I was read. Is the director made it as it was his interpretation of a romance from meeting, falling in love, growing to hate each other, and the feeling you have when it is over and you've been destroyed. That was what he was going for with the male character. It's supposed to be his through line of this thing, and it ends with it, but it's done with this very graphic, horrifying ending. But she like
the last 30 minutes of that movie are near. There
are needles and all the things I can't deal with are in it, and a saw.
Just think if there was a needle in a foot, you would be like,
yeah, there is a foot that fucking saws the goddamn thing off. Anyway, that was one of the weirder ones I had on there.
I've got an interesting one. One of the ones I really like, and I really like the Weasley villains, the ones that just kind of sneak in there. I mean, you could qualify like a Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings, which is a great sort of villainous character. Which is a movie with multiple villains. Obviously, you have the ultimate quintessential evil Sauron. Then you have Saruman, who has the change from basically he used to be good, although he was never. The thing is, he's weak in his old age, basically, and he succumbs to the power of Sauron. And then you got these very squirrely characters like Wormtongue.
Wormtail is also a good squirrely villain from
exactly. The
Harry
ones
Potter.
I've got a great one of those that's very just kind of just under my skin all the time. And you look at the actor now and you still fucking hate him. You still hate him. And that's Paul Reiser as Burke in Aliens. Because the thing is, it's hard to classify the aliens as the villain in that, because the aliens they're aliens.
No, the corporation is always the villain.
The corporation is the villain, and Paul Burke Reiser, whatever Burke's first name is the the actual epitome of that, or the essence of the corporation. You have Wayland as a person in that movie, and he is just so. That whole portion where he locks them in at the end, every time he dies in that movie, I just get happy because he was like, oh man, this guy has he had it coming to him. It's going to be that way. Like if Joffrey dies,
of course, Joffrey is a fantastic TV villain. I'm trying to get to it's hard to keep these on track because we're sort of on different areas. I just want to. There's a couple I definitely want to talk about it that are on that kind of pure evil side. One I have is Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and what's always interesting to me with those
Academy
villains,
Award winner.
are the ones that get beat and then win, and that's really what happens with her character is that he destroys her. He really does. He breaks her down. he takes all of her power away, and then she wins by lobotomizing him at the end of the movie, and but it's sort of hidden. But yeah, she's one of the most terrifying like those smart villains that are just fucking with people. Those are the ones that scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, that's a good note.
Same as the other one, which is more recent, is John Hawkes in Martha Marcy.
Oh man, that's a great one. And I hadn't even thought about that.
Chilling movie.
That is a very, very chilling movie, and that's a very interesting performance by him. One of the most, like I said in our character actors thing, I think he is my character actor, like bar none. I think he is the quintessential character actor, and is perfect in a role like that, where he just is unsettling and incredibly creepy. I can't imagine being more unsettled by any other actor being in that performance. Because, it's John Hawkes. What's he gonna do?
It's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean and I like those ones that are like, because like they're just so terrifying, because they're also very real. Like, there's nothing that can't exist about that character. Like, you look at Kevin Spacey in Seven, that's not really something you're likely to run into, right. But the character that Hawks plays, for sure, is out there. There are people like that out there.
Absolutely.
A lot of them.
Unfortunately,
yeah. I have one weird little one. It's hard to even classify him as a villain, but it was an interesting thought that popped in my head, which was Arlie Ermy in Full Metal Jacket, which is a sort of villain, sort of not villain, and very small, amount of screen time, but it's just one that I popped into my head. That's interesting.
That's an interesting one to bring up, I suppose. One of the things, now, if we're going to talk about like the ones that don't, here are the ones that, a couple of the ones that impressed me over the years, even though they are sort of one note. Stansfield in The Professional, played by Gary Oldman, is a one note character. I mean, he's a drug addict. You know from the very opening that he's a corrupt police officer. Yeah. The guy has no redeemable qualities whatsoever. But every time he's on screen, you almost smile.
It's Gary Oldman.
But you almost smile because he's so evil. I mean, who's the best performance in that movie? It's Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
And, the movie's not about him, but the movie is great because of him.
Exactly.
And, you could make the same argument for, like, a Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. Had that not been that performance, maybe it wouldn't be held in the esteem it is.
It wouldn't at all. That's a movie that comes down to one. It's one main performance.
Sure. Even recently, and it's the same sort of dynamic that exists with that film, with The Dark Knight, is Javier Bardem in Skyfall.
Oh, yeah.
Who is just... you understand his background, you understand, he used to work for there, he's gone through all this stuff, but in the context of the movie, he's never anything but pretty much one note. He's
exactly.
An evil character. You understand where he came from, but to the viewer, all he is this one note, but it's scene chewing at its best, and it's just hysterically awesome.
Yeah, and there's one, and it sort of fits to what we were talking about before. I skipped over it, but it's my favorite animated villain, which is Syndrome in The Incredibles, which I think is a really one of the better realized, because again, it's another one where you understand it. It's this kid that's this little fanboy.
But the funny thing about Syndrome is that I think the point is that and maybe Brad Bird was trying to make this, and maybe he wasn't. Even if Mr. Incredible had actually helped Syndrome or had actually taken him under his wing, he still would have ended up being a despisable and despicable.
Very
character.
likely, yeah. But he's fine. I like his anger. Like, it's interesting for me to watch. Scene chewing. We're kind of still on the last of the scene chewing. Yeah. Kathy Bates in Misery. Annie Wilkes is just so. It's just the performance is unmatched from a female for sure, as far as villains for me.
And the last, that's perfect. There's not much to be said about Kathy Bates in that film. One of the last ones I wanted to bring up was Cruz Lestat in Interview with the Vampire. Now, a lot of people will say that that's a very layered performance, and it is. And a lot of people don't consider Lestat a villain.
That was more of my argument. I don't know that he's a villain.
Well, then who's the villain?
Does every movie have to have a villain?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We're talking about a vampire movie. And if anybody has... Because the thing is Lestat is a very identifiable character. I almost meant this is a bridge to the more identifiable of the villains, basically. I still consider Lestat a villain in the context of that movie. But the thing is that's told from Brad Pitt's character perspective, Louis. Yeah, so it's told from Louis' perspective. So from Louis' perspective, Lestat is a villain. He is a villain. Lestat wronged him in many ways.
Yeah,
and he killed Lestat for all intents and purposes. He killed Lestat, and then didn't really. But he is great, and the thing is in that film, I think that Cruise is pretty menacing. I think I think he's more menacing in another movie as the villain. Okay,
Collateral.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing.
Just another one
interesting layered performance.
Yeah,
but I did want to bring up Interview with the Vampire really quickly because it did.
I like that.
Well, it's just an interesting. I don't know. It's an interesting concept to me because, and I love the whole thing about Anne Rice took away her support of the movie because she didn't want Tom Cruise cast, and then they cast Cruise anyway, and there was this huge, very very vocal battle between the two of them, and then she saw the first cut of the film and was like, "Okay, I was wrong."
Yeah, I argued. If you listen to the podcast with my mom, we talked about that because she hated it, and I don't know. Then again, my mom was of the conspiracy of it. Well, she just said that because the movie needed to make money.
I
don't really see her needing to do that.
She did. She filmed for the VHS. She filmed an opening for the film.
Yeah, like a retraction.
The film. Yeah, she filmed a retraction. They put it on the VHS. So I thought that was but so to kind of transition into that because you understand a lot of the Lestat stuff to maybe a few of the more identifiable villains that you've seen. I've got a really good one.
Okay, you go ahead because mine are different.
Now here's the only reason because I don't consider him a villain, and that's why I'm only going to bring him up because everybody else. There was a thread on Rotten Tomatoes a year ago where people were like, "Who are some of your favorite villains of recent years?" Daniel Plainview came up as a villain, whereas Bill the Butcher is a Daniel Day-Lewis role that is very much a villainous...
A literally mustache-twirling villain.
Yeah, yes, quite literally. Is very much, while a very layered and interesting villain, still pretty much a scene-chewing villain in the realm of your Hans Gruber or your, Heath Ledger and the Joker. Or Jack Nicholson's the Joker, for that matter. Daniel Plainview is, at some points of that film, kind of relatable. I understand his points. I understand him. The first half of the movie, I understand his motivations a lot.
Yeah.
And, because the thing is he didn't have to raise the child as his own. He makes a lot of decisions that are a little bit against what you would do for... I mean, the thing is, he ends up using it to his gain. But did he immediately think that when the guy's father died, and he was like, "I'm going to take this guy as his son"? He wasn't. I don't think he was immediately. The whole part where he's putting whiskey on the baby's lips and stuff like that, and trying to nurse the baby back or whatever. I feel like there is this interesting journey that we take in that movie of this, and I think what that movie is about is how power corrupts everybody. How money and power corrupts everybody. Because at the beginning of the movie, he has none. And so, even in the beginning when he's trying to buy the land, he's essentially just trying to be a good salesman.
Yeah.
And it's like, he becomes more despicable as the movie goes along.
He definitely becomes a villain.
He becomes a villain. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's fine. I thought you were going to say, there's nothing wrong with this guy through the whole movie. You just had a bad day.
Oh, no. Yeah. He becomes a villain. But I'm saying for the vast majority of the movie, he would not qualify as the foil of the villain.
I gotcha.
He's the main character of the movie. And another aspect of that, a villain that you cheer for, sort of like you follow Daniel Plainview, in a sense, through that movie. In the case of American Psycho, you almost... Or you're not rooting, you're observing, but you're kind of the casual observation of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho could be equated to sort of anticipatory. Like, oh, what's he going to do next?
Yeah.
It's almost like amusing.
There are a lot. I mean,
And it's the context of the movie, obviously.
Well, that's also what they do on TV, and we'll get to TV, I think, towards the end of this, maybe, because I definitely want to talk on those. But, because TV has to do it. TV has to make an interesting character to watch over many seasons and stuff. And American Psycho, I think, definitely was one of those ones that kind of kicked off that, like, we want this evil kind of character, and we don't mind that the lead of this thing is this bad person because they're fun.
Right.
They're interesting. I have two on mine that you could. One we've sort of you and I have talked about. I don't know if we ever brought it up on here, but one was I forget what magazine named it as like their villain of the year, but it was Summer from 500 Days of Summer, and we've kind of argued that back and forth.
I don't think she's
about
a villain.
her as villain. I understand the argument. I just thought I was one to bring up. Now, I do have one of a movie we've talked about a few times that popped into my head as a villain. I'm curious to see what you think, which is Roger Dodger.
Not a villain.
Not a villain. Just an asshole?
Well, yes. He's an asshole. But the thing is I like his character in that movie because I know his character. Like, I've met people like him. And it's one of those things where, because people like Roger, that's the thing. Like, he's a likable, interesting guy.
That's why I think he's a villain, because I think that there's a seedy side to it.
No, there is no seedy side to it. The only seedy part is where he goes to the brothel at the end, where he's like, okay, if you've missed out on every single opportunity, then you go to a brothel and you hook up with a prostitute.
Yeah.
But I don't consider that villainous behavior, because the thing is he lays everything out on the table for everybody. He's almost an open book.
Yeah.
Everybody knows he's an asshole.
That bugs me. That's a thing that's become very popular nowadays, is assholes. They're like, well, I let you know I was an asshole up front, so I get a free pass.
No, I'm not saying
I'm
you
like
get a
so
free pass.
honest about it. Like, yeah, I'm a total dick.
I'm just saying, I think that you could equate a Roger, like in Roger Dodger, to like a Sawyer in Lost, because he's a villain. He's an asshole.
Yeah,
and he's very much an asshole, and he's going to do a lot of asshole things that are only good for him. He's not going to think about anybody else. But he's not a bad guy. You know, he's not like a
he's
villain.
ready to dick over other people pretty readily. Like, that's bad guy to me. That's just me.
Yeah,
you wouldn't dick me over like that.
I don't see it that way.
Villain.
Yes, maybe it's just because I'm a villain. Maybe it's just because I'm all out for
You're
myself.
a fucking villain.
Well, anyways, that's a good seg to TV, though. I'm
for
done
sure.
with the major ones I kind of wanted to hit on.
Gordon Gekko? Wall Street? Villain? Villainous?
That's a difficult one.
It's a difficult one. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I'm not sure I would qualify him as a villain. I would definitely qualify him as more of an asshole than Roger.
So above Roger Dodger, but below Hans Gruber.
Below Hans Gruber.
On our sliding villainous scale.
Yes,
like
exactly.
this.
I think we should actually start a villain scale, and every time we see...
That would be awesome.
Like, dude, on
make
a scale
a thermometer of villain. Who's the ultimate? Like Hitler? Or like who's the ultimate? God, that's a good fucking question. Who is the most downright disgusting, despicably horrifying, evil villain of all time?
Well, you've got, like, Sauron. Or
Sauron, I don't know. That's one of my issues with Lord of the Rings. I knew you were going to talk about it.
Because he's the epitome of pure evil.
Yeah, but he's like, I don't know, it's like Freddy. Like, I don't know, I just don't, it's not an interesting villain to
okay,
me.
so
Yeah.
If you're going to go outside of the ones that are supposed to be
Yeah,
the epitome of pure evil...
Yeah, let's try to, and maybe if we can take out, like, magical or mystical.
Shit, I was going to bring up Tim Curry in Legend.
Okay, I'll let that one go.
I was like, oh, come on. I'm just trying to think of ones who were supposed to be, like, completely, obviously evil. Okay, I've got one for you. Robin Williams' character in Insomnia, which actually, the thing is, I actually like the Norwegian Insomnia better, but Robin Williams is better as the villain in the Christopher Nolan version.
Yeah.
He is probably almost near the top of that villain scale for me, because he is a sociopathic killer that justifies everything in his head. He knows in his
Yeah.
head he's doing everything for a real good purpose, and that he is right, and that this is, and that's that's a little bit weird. That's what is very unsettling to me.
That's like John Doe and Seven, same thing.
Kind of, and it's close to that. And I think that he is very good in that. The thing, I think you could rate, John Doe up there as well. The thing is, in Seven, I find that character very interesting. I really want. I mean, he's evil, like the most evil, but I always want to hear one more monologue.
Oh, absolutely. He's but that's why. Like, those are the ones that like literally give me goosebumps.
But see, the thing is, he's despicable. But I was like very unraveled in the theater watching Insomnia.
Yeah.
Whereas watching Seven, I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of digging this.
This
like,
guy's great.
Yes, I'm like, this is awesome. Like, it's Brad Dourif in the one episode of X-Files Beyond the Sea in season 1, episode 10. But yeah, anyways. Well, let's talk about a couple TV characters.
I mean, and it's funny, like, I left off of I put 2 on my list immediately, and I didn't really think, because I didn't think you were going to do a lot of TV, and I kind of left it, and I left off, like, one of my my most obsessive show right now, actually, which is Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad, who is another one of those turning, and you're behind a little bit, right?
We've started watching the first half of
Okay.
We're like 3 episodes into the last bit.
I mean, I think that turn has had... Like, you can argue for the first few seasons that this is just a man trying to provide for his family and a good person that's doing bad things.
He's gone from anti-hero to villain.
Yeah, he has gone completely to villain. He's become just greedy and horrifying, and I love it. You've got Tony Soprano. I mean, you've got a...
He's also an anti-hero. I think you're that's the interesting thing about television. Is
they all are, mostly.
It's a medium that allows for a lot of these characters to be very ambiguous and have bad intentions, but still not be, or not the most noble.
But I
of
think we
intentions,
like to forget, like Tony Soprano. Don't forget it. Tony Soprano kills people. This is a murderer. So is Dexter. Dexter kills bad people, though. Dexter is more of an anti-hero than Tony Soprano.
So a lot of the people that Tony Soprano kills are bad people, too.
Yeah, but Tony Soprano also just kills people that get in his way. Tony Soprano is a murderer. Is John Gotti an anti-hero? No, he's a fucking murderer.
Yes. No, I agree with you. I'm just being a little bit of a devil's advocate.
I know. And listen, I love Tony Soprano. I love that show. I love watching that character. And I'm entertained the same way I'm entertained by John Doe and Seven. Like, he's just a fun... It's James Gandolfini. Fuck, burst in the scene in True Romance. Yeah, in True Romance, another great villain role is him in True Romance. The really unsettling, fucking small amounts of time.
If there is a villain in that movie, it's definitely Gandolfini.
Yeah,
because he's great.
But I mean, but you look at those. The only one that I see that's true
for those that haven't seen True Romance, watch just the scene of Gandolfini and Brad Pitt. Because it's one of the funniest scenes, like, where you have this guy who's basically just bloodthirsty and ready to kill somebody, and Brad Pitt is just smoking weed out of a honeybee honey bottle on the couch. It's fucking hysterical.
That or where he punches
where he beats her. Beats up Patricia Arquette. Well, that's a tough scene. I'm just saying the scene with Brad Pitt's hysterical.
Yeah. The one I picked for. There are 2 on TV that were really good villains. I think true villains. One is Al Swearingen in Deadwood. Ian McShane can play a villain in his sleep, and really there is not. They add certain things to that character, but that's in the most part that's just a bad dude. Like, that's just not a good guy.
Yeah.
And then shit, I just forgot who the other one was that was in my head. Oh, Michael Emerson in Lost. Benjamin Linus, who. You get a little bit more. You get some back with him, but does some pretty despicable shit in that show.
Well, that's the thing. I thought they were going to go a different direction with Lost after they introduced him, because he's this evil character. He's a bad guy, and then I thought they were going to develop it and flesh it out, which they started doing. But then he kept doing despicable things.
Yeah,
and
they didn't really know how to...
Yeah.
They sort of did the same thing in Alias. I don't know if you ever watched that show or not, but Arvin Sloane... Yeah, Arvin Sloane was a pretty amazing villain as well, that they started to flesh something out, and they're like, no, I think we just go back to making him pure evil. And he has a very good end of the end of the series with him it's a total Twilight Zone moment, but I still loved it, is that he gets the hero, the Jack Bristow character, traps him in a cave after he's taken this like potion or whatever that makes him live forever. So he traps. So now I fight it. Like there was time. There was time. It was very Twilight Zone,
right? And that's where when I wanted to bring up is the Smoking Man and the X-Files. I brought up the X-Files earlier, and I mean, obviously, anybody who understands the mythos of the first to the sixth season knows that the Smoking Man. Basically, it was really funny. That was a huge example of the power that an audience, because of the internet, now has over the show. Because the Smoking Man showed up in 3 episodes of the first season. One time he was off camera. You just saw the smoke drifting. Showed up like 5 times in the second season. By the 4th season, he was in almost every episode. Just here or there or doing one thing. I mean, it was very interesting because he was such a huge fan favorite. And nobody really knew what his intention was. He knew he was behind some of this stuff. He knew he was playing as a foil to the X-Files and what Mulder and Scully were doing. But really, really interesting villain character, I think, and very layered, because especially once you understand his past. And I mean, they insinuate that he assassinated Kennedy. They insinuate a lot of stuff in the show. But he's a really interesting villain character. Very multi-layered, very well played character.
One more on that, on the TV side. It just leapt out of my head again. You were talking about the Smoking Man, and I was thinking about TV shows. I had an interesting one, and I think it's gone from my head now. But fuck, and it was a show.
Job.
Oh yes, Battlestar Galactica, Gaius Baltar. And you can argue good, bad about Gaius. The only problem I have with that show is that there was a little bit too much of a redemption of Gaius Baltar, a little too forced, mainly because he was such an interesting character and fun to watch. He does awful. First of all, he is responsible for the annihilation of the human race.
Right.
That's one.
I haven't watched all of Battlestar Galactica, so don't spoil anything.
And not spoil. I mean, how far through did you get to New Caprica? He takes over on New Caprica?
No.
Okay. That's like season 3. They have this crazy time.
We're halfway through season 2 or something.
But yeah, Gaius, I mean, there is definitely a redemptive arc to him, but it's kind of like it's interesting. He goes the other way. It's a villain who becomes a good person, maybe, or becomes something that, instead of a good person that becomes a villain. And his turn makes sense. Yeah,
Snape is a villain in the first movie.
Dick. He's just a dick. Snape is the Roger Dodger of the Harry Potter universe, but he's a good dude.
He's like, Harry, after this, I'm going to show you the way of the world. It's like, stay away from the redheads.
We're going to a brothel.
Yeah, it's like, cast a love potion for symmetry. No, that's actually kind of funny. Well, anyways, we'll keep it short this week and wrap it up. Where are we?
Like 52 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Not really short.
No, we're not really short.
We'll cut out some of the things we talked about so that by this point it will be short.
Yes.
We don't edit. That's just a joke.
Yes.
We don't edit. In fact, for those of you eagle-eared listeners out there, you may have noticed that a few weeks ago we had just a pause while Ben went to go pee that I forgot to edit out of the podcast. So that's on air.
I didn't go.
You were like, hey, pause it for a second, and then you went to go take a leak, and then you came back, and you're like, okay, we'll start up again here. And then I was like, okay, I'll edit that out. I forgot. Sorry.
Okay. Awesome.
That's the kind of like spontaneous, amazing fun you get on the New Way podcast. We're like, whose line is it anyway of podcasts? What's going to happen next? I don't know.
Absolutely.
It's good shit.
All right. Well, we're off to our beer fest.
And then we may try to record another one of these off of the thing.
That'd be hysterical, actually.
We may try to do another one.
We should have just recorded this afterwards and just have it us be like,
we'll do another. We'll maybe try another one. It could possibly not be listenable, but we'll see. Anyway, this has been The New Way with Ben and Matt. I'm Matt.
I'm Ben.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.